I'm John Hall, and I'm recommending that you come to downtowncommонsadvocates.weebly.com to learn more about our advocacy for a downtown commons in Santa Cruz. It gives tabs on what we advocate. It shows our friends and allies. It provides exciting resources about how to actually plan for a downtown commons in downtown Santa Cruz. Come and visit us and join with us at that tab, downtowncommonsadvocates.weebly.com.
I'm Steve Pleich, and welcome back to the second half of Voice from the Village. We're talking about downtown commons advocacy with, as I said, three very knowledgeable and passionate advocates for a vision of sustainability in downtown Santa Cruz. We welcome back Dr. John Hall, Karen Simmons, and Bob Morgan. Welcome back, folks.
Thanks very much, Steve. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk about a downtown commons here. And let's face the elephant in the living room. Why do some people want to have a 6-story parking garage with a library in it and maybe affordable housing? The history of that, I think, is important to understand. The parking district, which is a unit of the city government, has wanted to have a parking garage there for at least 10, maybe 15 years or more. The parking district is a government-owned business, in effect. What they do is build and sell parking. So they've wanted to have the garage there, but the farmers market, quite frankly, has sort of been in the way. It's hard to push out this wonderful, well-functioning, attractive place that is the farmers market to build a parking garage. And so along comes the library bond measure, Measure S, in 2016, $27 million devoted to building a reconstructed or renovated library on the site of the present library. And the parking district people and the city government got together with the library administration and said, well, you know, your money would go further if you built the library in the parking garage, because then you wouldn't have to pay for the shell structure. The library money could be devoted just to building the interior of the library underneath this parking garage. And the library people thought, well, gee, yeah, this does sound like an attractive deal. It'll make the $27 million go further. So I'd be interested, Karen, you've heard many people make arguments about why they think that there should be a parking garage and library there. What do you hear people say, and what do you think about it?
Well, I do hear this phrase, it's cheaper. And it does kind of strike me, because if all your decision making is simply because something's cheaper, it doesn't always get you. Maybe you better be careful what you wish for. I don't quite, of course I understand cheaper. I understand the need to factor that in, but to take that into account without even having any dip into possible fundraising, having friends of the library involved in soft costs. I just, I understand that phrase, but I don't quite see how that pertains here to getting us the best we can do. That library site has been the site of the Santa Cruz Library for over 120 years. It was originally the Carnegie Foundation at the turn of the 20th century helped build a library there. And I think that has gravitas. I think that just pulling out of a site that has meant so much for so long has consequences. But again, that cheaper phrase, I do hear it quite a bit. Cheaper is cheaper.
Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, John, thanks. And I'm glad to join again. I've lost my internet connection for a short time. There are other rationale also that I understand people are forwarding, and that has to do with the surface lots that the city currently owns being occupied by new housing developments, particularly affordable housing. And the thought is that when these surface lots become affordable housing, a number of spaces will be lost on those surface lots. I'm thinking of surface lots down along Front Street, for example. The fallacy there, though, is that currently there's a lot less need to build or to bundle parking into a structure that has housing. And you save quite a bit amount of money when you don't bundle a parking space with housing. In fact, each parking place built is about $68,000 to maintain and to build. So you can really save a lot of money for people who want to buy units downtown if you give them the option. Would you like a parking space? If you don't have a parking space, your condo is going to be X amount. If you do have a parking space, it's going to be this much more. In speaking with Sibley Simon recently, he shared that he was very confident, and Sibley, of course, is in housing development in the city. He was very confident that Santa Cruz is unique in that we have a workforce that could live downtown and work downtown and not need an automobile. And if folks wanted to have a car, they could certainly take an Uber or a Lyft or rent a car to go to the city or do a car share. And so it would be very attractive for folks to live in an affordable housing unit on a surface lot without a car. And so that in and of itself minimizes the need for more parking. And as I showed on a graph by Patrick Sigmund earlier in the show, we actually have a surplus of 2,000 parking spaces from the need in 2018 last parking census. And those numbers, as far as parking space need, are even decreasing. And the trends show that people aren't getting in cars and going downtown to park. They're using different modes to do that. Whether it's a jump bike, whether it's a bike, whether it's sharing a car, whether it's a bus. People don't want to get into cars in the congestion, particularly young people. So the argument that building affordable housing on surface lots really isn't justification to build an entire 600-car parking garage financed over 30 years at almost $90 million.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, what you seem to be saying is that you can make housing more affordable if you don't build the parking as part of the housing, if you don't require parking spaces to be dedicated to newly built affordable housing. I mean, doesn't building a parking space cost what, $67,000 or something like that?
Yeah, Adam Millard-Ball in an interview yesterday, and he's an environmental economist, works with parking. That's what he does up at UCSC with his students. He cited a figure of $68,000. And that's only going to rise. That's an expensive piece of cement. And, I want to bring up some legislation that just passed in California. Well, it was just enacted January 1st, and that's Assembly Bill 1763. And Assembly Bill 1763 allows developers and the city to build affordable housing within half a mile of a metro center, of a bus station, and only require 0.5 parking spaces per unit. That's the statute. Now, I'm sure that a developer could petition to build no parking, but the statute is 0.5 spaces per unit versus 1.5 spaces. And so that's a huge difference.
So that's knocking a good $34,000 off the price of any given unit of housing. It would sound like to me right off the bat. Well, what strikes me is that the parking district, the politics of this are that there are some people in city politics who've been pushing hard for this for a long time, both within city staff and the city manager some people on the city council, and some other people who think, gee, somehow parking is nirvana, and they don't want to listen to the arguments that parking isn't needed. But when they run into trouble, and frankly, there are many, many people in the city who are not exactly enthusiastic about eliminating the farmers market, and I think given the opportunity would love to see a downtown commons. Recognizing that, they said, oh, we need to, put a carrot out there. We need another candy bar to attract people. Let's put the library in there for more money. Let's say it's going to be for affordable housing. But the library was basically a bait and switch anyway. Measure S bonds. I looked at this pretty carefully. I looked through all the campaign literature for the run-up to the passage of Measure S bonds to improve libraries in North County, Santa Cruz. And I voted for it. And I voted for it never hearing that there was any plan to build a new downtown library other than at the present site. All the campaign literature, the appearances of the library director and other people, there were images showing the decrepit conditions of the present library, things like heating systems that needed to be replaced, that the internet was inadequate and all of this. We were going to change all of that by voting for the bond. And then there was the bait and switch that came with, let's throw in having it underneath a parking garage. And I wonder if you might, Karen, walk us through. I'm going to put up an image. Jason Architects, there are two competing proposals that are going to come to the head. That's the politics of it right now. One proposal is Jason Architects' proposal for a renovation, $27 million, pretty bare bones, but a nice, well-designed building that, with contributions from the community could be a really nice library where it is, fulfilling all the functions. And then this, on May 7th, Group 4 has this proposal for a parking garage with a library in it so that they can make an apples to apples comparison. Well, this in a way leaves aside the question of whether we can afford to embark on an $87 million project under the conditions of the economic downturn that we're in the middle of, and whether we would need to do that anyway, given the parking demand data that Bob has shared with us. So let me just show you the image from the Jason Architects proposal for the library renovation. This is the existing building, but in a very extensive reconstruction and renovation. Karen, what would you think about this? What can you walk us through any of what's going on here? And before let me just put in a plug for Don't Bury the Library.
Yes, absolutely.
They have a wealth of information. Don'tburythelibrary.weebly.com. Don'tburythelibrary.weebly.com. Karen?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's very interesting that the original architect, there was an architectural firm that was supposed to bring forth renderings and costs of the library in the garage. I mean, this is years and years have passed now. And that firm, somehow that didn't occur. So I find it very interesting that decision-making was proceeding with no costs and no renderings. So thankfully, our city council formed the library subcommittee, the three of them, Sandy Brown, Justin Cummings, and Donna Myers. And they put out another request for proposal to get something, some kind of costs and renderings for what can be done. And Jason Architects, I think, surprised all of us with this incredibly acceptable, incredibly functional, incredibly prideful presentation. The main difference here where you see the word library is that faces City Hall. So this again changes the whole feeling of this architecture of the building, just that in and of itself. And then for safety, for beauty, for many reasons, this glass wall that lets you see all the way through to the other end of the library, I think is wonderful. There's very little to debate other than finishing costs. Of course, you can have a comfy chair with a nice seat, or you can have a hard plastic chair. The costs are going to be different, but he certainly presented a very viable, thriving library presentation.
John, could I add something to
Sure.
Karen? And I think, Karen, your comment about the glass, facing the Civic Center, the east, or rather the west entrance now, moving from Church Street into facing Civic Center, really opens that whole plaza area up and makes it much more functional and much more attractive and desirable. And I can imagine coming down Church Street or coming down Center Street and seeing the City Hall there, seeing the newly renovated Civic Center, or Civic Auditorium rather, which is going to be under construction soon, and then entering the library, sitting down and looking at the City Hall, looking at the plaza. I mean, it's really a nice civic feeling, giving a sense of community. And I love that part of it. It really opens the library up and makes it more welcoming.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I mean, the thing that strikes me overall and I just lived in Santa Cruz for almost 10 years now, and it strikes me that it doesn't have the good overall city planning that other cities I've seen, San Luis Obispo, Davis, California, Healdsburg, Paso Robles, they have city planning that makes sense, that works for the downtown businesses, by creating public spaces, by creating good libraries, and by creating the downtown as this vibrant space. What's striking, and Karen really has emphasized this, is that Pacific Avenue is this sort of axis of downtown that's very, very narrow. You go away from Pacific Avenue in either direction, and it immediately falls off into spaces that are office buildings or whatever that don't have anything of interest for somebody to walk to. What would happen with the library where it is being renovated is that you would have a corridor from Pacific Avenue to there that could become this vital pedestrian walking space. Maybe the street would stay there, maybe not. But you would have two nodes, Pacific Avenue and the library, that ought to be able to create a vitality of spreading out, broadening the downtown. The same thing with the downtown commons. Once we have the downtown commons there, it will be an attractive place. You see this in Barcelona, you see it in any city in Europe practically, that a nice downtown plaza is surrounded by businesses, by cafes, by restaurants, so on and so forth. So we have an opportunity here that I think we mustn't let slip through our hands. And it fits in this overall question of how to plan a vibrant downtown Santa Cruz. So I'm just curious, has either of you a favorite other place, other city that you've been to where you see the kind of things that you'd like to see happen in Santa Cruz?
Absolutely. Paso Robles. It's a beautiful square there. And I think the library sits on that open square. Sonoma Square is lovely. And these squares are large. We can even think of Los Gatos has a nice square downtown on Main Street there. So I think there are many examples where cities know that these kinds of things attract people, that they're desirable, that they're certainly more appealing than a 6-story megalithic concrete garage.
Yeah.
that, people know this thing intrinsically. It's a piece of beauty. It's something to be proud of. And those kinds of places are places that I like to go to, spend time in, and spend money in too.
Oh, there you
Santa
go.
Barbara, San Francisco. You need places that you can peel off to. That's what makes it fun to walk about, to have your walkabouts in the city, places you don't really not know, but you're going to make a turn and there's going to be that nice surprise that's, a public square. And it's always a good feeling to come across that. And I think Lot 4 especially, with renovating the levee as well. I mean, we haven't really been brought that into the picture, but going towards the river, having the river walk, it's only another, like you said, a couple blocks from Lot 4. So that whole civic center vision going through the plaza to the levee walk is really exciting to think about. So I hope I see it.
I hope we all see it, and we are just about out of time. I want to take my example is Davis, California, where I lived for many years. We had to fight in Davis for 10 years to get the city government to do the right thing, double the size of the downtown Central Park, and create a permanent market, farmers market shed for it there. The city fathers and mothers resisted it, and it turned out to be the best thing that has ever happened to Davis. It is incredible. If you've ever been to Davis for one of the Wednesday evening or Saturday markets, I know you'll know what I'm talking about. We have just a minute left for each of us. Karen, going to you first, and then Bob with your final thoughts about a downtown commons.
I think the downtown commons is going to reflect the thriving, sustainable future that Santa Cruz wants. And I think it's a vital, absolute, vital organ of that plan, with just thinking about not having it. Again, I think with this pandemic, with climate change, with all of this heaviness that we all are feeling and carrying, this is even more obviously necessary to have in your community, to be healthy, to stay healthy. It's not, to me, it's not an option, like, that's an option. To me, it's really your heartbeat, and you best make sure that it's the best it can be. Yeah.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, thanks, John. The rationale to add more parking to downtown Santa Cruz and build a large 600-car parking structure just doesn't hold up. The data doesn't defend it. The cost is exorbitant. And, in this time now of uncertainty, I'm going to say I really believe it's unconscionable to embark on a project which could demand financing of upwards of $3 million a year over 30 years to pay for an $87 million garage with a library. I don't think right now, I don't think that the numbers, the parking designs for the city never hold up to justify a new parking garage. And I think particularly now, this is just, not a good thing for the city and really ill thought out. Yeah.
We have the city facing a $10 million budget deficit for the next fiscal year. We have the opportunity to create a downtown commons with a farmers market through a community planning process that will bring us together as a community, rather than having a farmers market on asphalt paving with curbs that people trip over. We can have a dedicated space to it, and the kind of spaces that Karen has talked about, the kind of spaces you see people gathering in whether there's a market on or not, just to hang out and be with each other around a fountain or something. I am looking forward to getting past the politics of the division where people are pushing for a library in a garage when the garage itself isn't justified, and getting to the point where we can actually create this presence of community in Santa Cruz. I want to thank Bob and Ken for participating, and Steve. It's been such a pleasure for us to join you here this evening. Thanks very much.
I'm Karen Simmons, directing you to don'tburythelibrary.weebly.com. That's the website that answers many questions and has many resources to help you understand the situation and the decision-making necessary about the library in the garage or renovating at its current site.
I'm Bob Morgan, and this is a wonderful resource for those who want to learn more about the proposed parking facility, the current downtown farmers market. The website is garagealternatives.org. It has great content, many different explanations about what the city is proposing to do at our current downtown farmers market. I recommend the website, garagealternatives.org.
I'm John Hall, and I'm recommending that you come to downtowncommонsadvocates.weebly.com to learn more about our advocacy for a downtown commons in Santa Cruz. It gives tabs on what we advocate. It shows our friends and allies. It provides exciting resources about how to actually plan for a downtown commons in downtown Santa Cruz. Come and visit us and join with us at that tab, downtowncommonsadvocates.weebly.com.
Thanks again to our guests, Professor John Hall, Bob Morgan, and Karen Simmons. A fascinating discussion, and you can see on the screen here the Downtown Commons Advocates website. Please go to that, take a look at this, become involved, become engaged. This is the future of our downtown, and just as we at CTV continue to do the programming that we think that serves our community, these folks as well are serving their community by sharing their vision. So we thank them. And I've been Steve Pleich, and please tune in next month for another episode of Voices from the Village. Good night. Thanks a lot.